Hello there.
The cinema courtroom is now in session.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome back to the Cinema Courtroom Show. I am your host and galactic judge, Makram, presiding over another groundbreaking and yet again suspenseful episode where we put your favorite blockbuster motion pictures on trial and tear it apart limb by limb, or elevate it like we're going to be giving it our kidneys. if that's a apt way to put it. Whether you're listening on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, or the Cinema Courtroom YouTube channel, we thank you for tuning in. Especially if you want to hear my funny jokes. And ask that you don't forget to like and subscribe to the Cinema Courtroom on your way out. Every click on the icon counts, so please ring the notification bell and share this podcast with your friends, family, cat, dog, pigeon, whomever. We do not discriminate here. Look, it's been a few months since our last episode, where we conversed about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and for that, I sincerely apologize. But fear not, as we will be returning to our 2-episode-a-week release model. And, alright, how do I put this? Okay, I'm going to be telling you this, and then it's going to become standard procedure from here on out. So, I have decided that for every Tuesday, every week, we will be delivering my verdicts on old and new movie releases, right? While every Friday of every week, we will delve into the latest industry discourse, not movies, just, general discourse on the cinema industry, to close off the respective week. Okay, so Tuesday, movies, Friday, industry discourse. Our industry discourse will consist of at least 8 topics, maybe more. And that's because I won't have to cram it in with a movie review and, focus on, let's say, only around 15 to half an hour of news and industry topics, and vice versa with movie reviews, where I had to keep it 7 minutes short, or 15 minutes at most, or maybe on a good day half an hour, just so I can get into the news topics. But that's not going to be a constraint anymore, because I'm going to upgrade the length of the podcast, and we're going to be going in depth of whatever we're going to talk about, just as we're going to be doing in this episode. I'm just going to be talking about that movie, nothing else, then the outro, and then it's going to be like that every week. And also, this is going to be a good way to just discuss whatever we need to discuss. I believe that time constraints is kind of a contributing factor to censorship. So we won't have to be quote unquote censored because of a time constraint, if you catch my drift. We hope you'll join us on this new radical journey and the new format of our show. And don't forget to rate the Cinema Courtroom Show out of 5 on your favorite platforms as well, because it really helps, tell people that people are really enjoying my podcast. Now, if you aren't, then feel free not to, because the last thing I want for you is just to do me harm by flattery. Okay? That's what my comment section is for. And I really want you guys to just pick my podcast apart, just as I pick every movie apart, and just tell me what you think about it. And yeah, the algorithm machine will be boosted. Trust me, more than you know. Now, without further ado, let's review. Drumroll, please. It's not going to be a fun movie, but I'm going to review it anyway. All Quiet on the Western Front by Edward Berger. You know what? What the fuck? Okay. Edward Berger. I think I've just established that I am horrible at pronouncing German names. So, Edward Berger, which is now streaming on Netflix. But before then, let's get into some background history. All Quiet on the Western Front is a profound and impactful novel set during World War I. It offers an honest and gripping portrayal of the devastating effects of war on young German soldiers, as the story follows a group of those soldiers who eagerly enlisted in the army out of patriotic zeal, only to have their dreams shattered by the brutal realities of combat. The novel and its 1930 film adaptation faced censorship and condemnation from nationalistic and militarist factions in Germany. These groups perceived the story as unpatriotic and opposed its very concept. The book, All Quiet on the Western Front, takes us, like the movie, on a journey through the trenches where we witness the experiences of these German soldiers as they confront the unimaginable horrors of war. All Quiet on the Western Front, according to critics, stands as a powerful testament to the dehumanization of war. It challenges the glorified narratives of heroism and patriotism often associated with conflicts. Instead, it unveils the harsh reality and futility of war, urging readers to reflect on its senselessness. It is worth noting that the novel faced opposition in Germany due to its portrayal of disillusionment and trauma among soldiers. However, these challenges only served to highlight the significance of Remarque's work. By shedding light on the true cost of war, the novel became a powerful anti-war statement, encouraging critical thinking and fostering empathy for those affected by conflict. Regardless of this controversy, the novel and film gained widespread popularity and international recognition. All Quiet on the Western Front's powerful message resonated with readers and the cinema audience, transcending borders and cultures. It provided a poignant critique of war and its devastating effects on humanity, leaving a lasting impact on subsequent generations. In this episode of the Cinema Courtroom, I will be offering my own personal take on Edward Berger's All Quiet on the Western Front movie, which consolidated Oscars for Best Original Score, Best Cinematography, Production Design, and Best International Feature. Now streaming on Netflix. Join me as I break down this latest iteration of All Quiet on the Western Front, and be sure to let me know your insights as well. Welcome to the captivating realm of war motion pictures, where the battlefields become our cinematic playground. There's an intriguing pattern that emerges from these gripping flicks, a pattern that many war pictures strive to follow. Yet, amidst the sea of ambitious attempts, there are a few that stand out, provoking our thoughts, immersing us in the harsh realities of war with their vivid imagery of mustard gas and patriotism, fighting for the so-called greater good, whatever the hell that means anymore. leaving an indelible emotional impact and showcasing a level of gritty authenticity that keeps us yearning for more. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we turn the jury's attention to a cautionary picture in this genre here in the cinema courtroom. All Quiet on the Western Front. As we convene in this esteemed courtroom, I am going to have an interesting time dissecting this remarkable war movie, examining its every element under scrutiny, if there is any scrutiny to be had with this movie at all, and my mighty gavel. We shall explore the intricate tapestry of its set design, the symphony of its original score, the unflinching realism it portrays. And before I talk about that, I'll be talking about why realism is essential to movies in general, not just All Quiet on the Western Front, but also I'm going to be talking about the delicate balance of adapting the original story in this movie. And also, we're going to enrich our discourse by drawing comparisons to another formidable war picture, 1917. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let us talk about the exquisite set design of All Quiet on the Western Front. So I'm just going to get straight to the point. The set design for All Quiet on the Western Front is a wallpaper image on its own. I mean, the whole production set and, design for this movie illustrates the story of All Quiet in the Western Front, on the Western Front, in a really effective way. And not to mention how the location where they were, shooting the damn thing was just a flat piece of land. There is this article that I believe is from Deadline that specified how they had around 20 diggers digging up the site and molding the craters into circular shapes. And what made the set design to me for All Quiet on the Western Front even more just brilliant was how it was based on non-propaganda source images, especially for the exterior design for the trenches and battlefield. Not to mention how the same materials utilized in the year 1917 were actually made from the exact same wood material. Needless to say, the set design's explicit attention to detail was spot on. Through the economical use of diligent craftsmanship and historical accuracy, non-biased historical sources, All Quiet on the Western Front's set design transports us to the dark depiction of war. Alright, so the soundtrack for All Quiet on the Western Front was nothing short of theatrical. And that's a pretty big thing to say for something that just went direct to streaming. I remember watching this movie and listening to the beat of the orchestra just throttling in the door. I especially appreciated how they utilized electric notes to its maximized effect, because it really sounded like an industrial bulldozer, right? Or rather tank, maybe an industrial bulldozer, although it did sound a bit like a war tank too. Regardless, there was nothing human about the way that the soundtrack of All Quiet sounded to my ears. And, from the way that I heard it, it was just an orchestra that conveyed the brutality and cowardice of a government-sanctioned war. And just a government-sanctioned war in general, not just the French and Germans, but any government that just, wants people to do their dirty work for them. Call me old-fashioned, but there used to be a time where leaders would fight alongside their soldiers. But anyway, furthermore, this innovative use of sound design with the electric notes deepens our immersion into the All Quiet on the Western Front picture, allowing us viewers to experience the visceral impact of the war machinery. It certainly goes without saying that the theatrical and evocative soundtrack of All Quiet on the Western Front is a very vital component of why I really appreciated this movie. For again, the use of electric notes and carefully crafted compositions. And I'm going to say this again because it's probably the main highlight of this movie. But the sound compositions amplifies the themes of brutality, dehumanization, and impending doom. The soundtrack's ability to immerse viewers in the world of the film and evoke strong emotional responses demonstrates the soundtrack's importance as a storytelling device, especially how it's applied in this movie. And with that in consideration, I think that the All Quiet of the Western Front movie showcases the power of a well-crafted soundtrack, and a memorable one, in order to enhance the viewing experience and contribute to a deeper understanding of the film's message, the dehumanization of war. Now, how about this movie's realism? When analyzing any motion picture that is primarily focused on the theme of war and conflict in general, it is essential to explore the concept of realism and its significance. So, realism allows us to connect with the subject matter, such as war, as I've already mentioned, obviously, on a deeper and rich, complex level, enabling us to emphasize with the characters and their experiences by exhibiting an accurate and authentic portrayal of war. All Quiet on the Western Front challenges our preconceived notions and forces us to confront the harsh realities of armed conflict. That being stated, engaging in a discourse about realism not only enhances our comprehension of the motion picture, but it also drives us to reflect upon the human condition and the profound impact of war on individuals and societies. So anyhow, I want to go in depth about another element that really stood out to me about All Quiet on the Western Front. And that's the realistic aspect of it, which is exactly how the adaptation of the original story was, which I will get into next. The adaptation of the original story and whether or not the original story adaptation is any different from Edward Berger's iteration, yada yada yada. But first, let's talk about the realism of this iteration of All Quiet on the Western Front. And I know, it's cliche to call it out at this point, anyway. But that would not make it any less true for how war is portrayed, typically, and unfortunately, in the silver screens. Most movies, not all of them, but most, illustrate a disbelief when it comes to fighting in war. Like, don't even get me started on the idiotic romance arc in that Pearl Harbor movie. I'm gonna give Danny my whole heart, but I don't think I'll ever look at another sunset without thinking of you. Gross. So fucking gross. And the hilarious thing is, movies like Pearl Harbor, they focus so much time on the epicness and sacrifice when it comes to fighting in World War I, or any conflict for that matter. And as if Pearl Harbor isn't bad enough, I can converse about all evening about the cliche military phrases utilized by screenwriters, obviously using AI, or AI, if it the non-advanced version of AI, that is, or if you're just using it in a way to type generic shit in their screenplays. Get some, pew, 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 or don't you die on me, Sam, which is all well and fun for a Hollywood blockbuster that feels equivalent to a Saturday morning frickin' cartoon. But I think that these kind of movies that just suspend your belief and use shitty dialogue do a disservice to the grittiness, the psychological turmoil, the black elements, and the sheer tragic nature of an actual military conflict. All Quiet on the Western Front, although filmed beautifully, exhibits sacrifice, tragedy, especially in the third act, when all the German and French soldiers had to do was get along for 10 flipping minutes. 10 minutes was all they needed to just cuddle. But then, all hell broke loose, and it resulted in the death of our protagonist Paul. Another thing that All Quiet on the Western Front achieves well in its terms of its realistic portrayals is the realness of having an ancestor war hero. Paul had one, and now the next character in the end of the third act has one too. Like, the soldiers don't even know whose clothes that they are wearing in the beginning of the movie. Propaganda swayed their critical thinking and won them over to a frosty cold conflict. And not to mention, and I know I already talked about the set design, but you can obviously look at the substantial commitment and passion that the production crew had for this movie, and in order to make the sets for All Quiet on the Western Front look as realistic as manly possible. In addition, the visuals and acting performances in All Quiet on the Western Front contribute to the film's realism. The terror depicted in the soldiers' screams feels so incredibly real, capturing the horrors they face on a daily basis. The actors' performances increase the depth and authenticity and multiple dimensions to the characters as well, making the audience truly emphasize with their experiences, leading to my next point of why realism for All Quiet on the Western Front and cinema is crucial, despite how the message might be in contrast to my beliefs. That I'm going to get into that. Listen, generally speaking, realism in cinema holds immense value because realism in cinema gives us a platform for social commentary and historical examination. It is very easy to compel your audience with realism to form a social opinion if they are given a portrait of the raw meat before it is cooked in favor of one side. Any side. There's no social opinion that is exempt from having your facts straight. None. You need to have your facts straight, then, give us your, artistic opinion. And realism allows us to critically analyze the movie anyway, and where the movie is coming from. And by accurately depicting the horrors of war, regardless of whether or not you think that war is a necessity for us to thrive. All Quiet on the Western Front sheds light on some of the sacrifices made by both the German and French soldiers and the lasting consequences of armed conflicts. Now, in regards to my personal belief system of whether or not war is even necessary, listen, I am by no means a pacifist. For a matter of fact, I detest pacifism because listen, here's my perception when it comes to war and stuff. When there is evil that can be prevented, and this context is key here, but when there's evil that that we can fight against, and then we choose not to fight against evil because you want to be a peaceful goody two shoes, or you feel like it's wrong to step in. you are allowing that evil to fester and infiltrate the order of the world. And that I really can't get behind. Like, would you tell the Jews in Holocaust that the Soviets should have been pacifists and not liberated them from the death camps? No, you would not dare tell a single victim of the Holocaust that pacifism is the key. Pacifism sucks, okay? It really does. But even I cannot deny that when it comes to the depiction of war in this movie as an unnecessary thing, which I don't agree with such a depiction, All Quiet on the Western Front helps us grasp the immense toll that warfare takes on both the physical and psychological well-being of individuals involved in conflict. Because whether or not you and me believe in the idea of pacifism, there is enough credible and objective research to show just the psychological turmoil of soldiers in the military and physical. And through a realistic lens, All Quiet invites us to critically examine the glorification and romanticization of war prevalent in popular media. Now again, pacifism isn't my cup of tea. If you need to go to war, then you have to go to war, right? But I respect the effort that this movie has made in highlighting the gritty and tragic aspects of the First World War. Which, you know it's funny? People like to make their stories and movies based on the Second World War because it happens to be the one where Hitler rose to power and, Captain America became a thing and all of that. But the First World War was I think, much more brutal, considering the technological advancements they had during the time. I get it. World War II had the atomic bomb, but World War I was essentially a world of no atomic bombs, and that was brutal on its own. So keep that in mind. So I really think that this highlighted World War I conflict prompts us to question the narratives perpetrated by society and ensures a more nuanced comprehension of the true consequences of war through heavy realism. When it comes to films that have shaped the landscape of cinema, I think the original adaptation of All Quiet on the Western Front stands tall as a significant milestone. It emerged as one of the earliest and most memorable attempts to bring a powerful anti-war narrative to the screen. And that's why I think its significance remains. The impact it had on audiences and the way it resonated with viewers, it cannot be overstated. Now, fast forward to the present, and we find ourselves witnessing a reimagination of the iconic story on Netflix, which I'm talking about now. To be straightforward and to the point, Netflix version of All Quiet on the Western Front successfully maintains the original story, powerful anti-war message. The essence that made the book and the original film so compelling remains intact, as if passed down through the generations. The characters, their struggles, and the sheer brutality of war are vividly portrayed, evoking a range of emotions within, again, us, the people viewing it on Netflix. And one notable contrast between this Netflix adaptation and its predecessor lies in the increased budget and the grandeur of the set designs, the visual spectacle that unfolds on the screen, from the hauntingly desolate trenches as reflected by the brilliant set designs to the explosive battlegrounds. every frame of All Quiet on the Western Front feels like intricately crafted to transport the audience back in time to 1917 and immerse them in the harrowing reality faced by the German soldiers. But listen, we should not just be misguided by the allure of fancy set designs alone. I think that the heart and soul of this adaptation lies in its unwavering commitment to conveying the message of anti-war. Again, I have my own beliefs on pro-war, anti-war, and whatnot, and I already discussed that in the realism section of this review. But I digress to say that the horrors of war, and whether or not you believe they're a necessity, again, that doesn't take away from how the horrors of war in this movie are not sugarcoated or glorified. Instead, they are presented in all their stark brutality, which is very, very powerful. And the Netflix adaptation forces us to confront, just like the original adaptation does, the grim realities of battle, and the loss of innocence. Like, how Paul had, developed some sort of sympathy toward the dying French soldier when it was, quote unquote, the moment where it was quiet on the Western Front. But then in the end of the movie, he immediately, right after his friend gets killed, he goes rogue and he lets that cloud his judgment because he's lost all whatever innocence that remained in him, which I think it makes this a tragic story. And we also get to see how battle has a devastating toll on the human spirit. It serves as a sobering reminder of the senselessness and futility of war. Both Netflix and the original adaptation of All Quiet on the Western Front does, urging us to question the very nature of conflict and the consequences it brings. As the minutes tick by, one cannot help but be engrossed in the profound performances delivered by the talented cast and crew. I think each actor brings their A game, effortlessly immersing themselves in their respective roles and breathing life into these characters. Their portrayals tug at our heartstrings like a dog getting tugged on a leash as we witness their transformation from eager young men fueled by patriotic fervor to battle-weary soldiers scarred by the unforgiving realities of warfare. It is through their eyes, I think, that we get to see the consequences of war, and it is through their performances that we are reminded of the power of empathy and the value of a human life, but how sometimes our perspective on a human life can really change if something affects us, and then all of a sudden we want to start killing French people. So anyway, I think Netflix, all in all, adaptation of All Quiet on the Western Front deserves applause for its ability to maintain the essence of the original story, which I believe significantly transformed the landscape of cinema, while infusing it with a newfound visual splendor. The increased budget and the more elaborate set designs serve to enhance the immersive experience. But it is the unwavering commitment to the anti-war message that truly sets this adaptation apart. As we witness the camera unfold on the screen, we are indeed reminded that war is tragic. It knows no boundaries, and that its consequences are truly felt by both the German and the French in the story. And in general, by all. Netflix has once again, really excelled in delivering a powerful and thought-provoking narrative to our small screen. I believe it should have been on the big screen, worldwide, but whatever. Ensuring that the message of All Quiet on the Western Front continues to resonate with audiences who may have not have seen or read the original adaptation, reminding us of the eternal quest for peace in a world haunted by the echoes of war. If you've been captivated by what you've heard so far, prepare yourself for a treat throughout the remainder of this podcast, because we're not finished, ladies and gentlemen. But before we proceed, let me take a moment to remind you of an exciting opportunity. You can become one of, yes, the first listeners to enjoy new episodes on my audio feed. And hear this, it only requires 2 simple steps. To ensure you never miss a single captivating episode of the Cinema Courtroom Show, simply hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell right now. Or rate this podcast out of 5 on Spotify, Anchor, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, or even the Cinema Courtroom YouTube channel for exclusive video coverage every week. We've got you covered. Prepare yourself to dive deep in the thrilling realm of movie verdicts and industry affairs with the Cinema Courtroom Show. And here's an exciting bonus for all of our esteemed listeners. By subscribing to the Cinema Courtroom today, I can promise you a front row seat to insightful discussions and thought-provoking debates that will enhance your movie watching experience. Look, this is the perfect podcast for movie connoisseurs like yourself. I am your host, Makram, urging you to subscribe and join our cinema jury, where we determine the verdicts. All you have to do is look up and subscribe to the Cinema Courtroom on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, or the Cinema Courtroom YouTube channel today. Embrace the power of justice in the Cinemaverse with the Cinema Courtroom, powered by real passion, fueling film and TV fandom. Before we discuss the comparison of All Quiet on the Western Front to another war picture, I'm going to play a quick clip from the making of All Quiet on the Western Front. Take a listen.
All Quiet on the Western Front required the VFX to be absolutely photoreal, so as not to distract the audience from its literary and cinematic legacy. To achieve this look, we decided to put an emphasis on using as many photographic elements as possible. We chose to add extra compositing time and use CG models and simulations only where it was absolutely needed. Photorealism was key. During principal photography, time was carved out to do multiple passes per setup. It was a lot more time-consuming approach, but visually a very rewarding technique. Our locations and props were 3D scanned and modeled to support the placement of the photographic elements with CG shadows and CG reflections. To react to changes in contrast during the grade, a lot of shots were rendered in multiple versions to be able to do live mixing during the final grade. Furthermore, VFX contributed to historically accurate sets and set the moods with environmental additions such as snow, weather, heavy smoke clouds, cold breath, and eerie matte painting establishes. The appearance of the first machines of war were handled in 3D animation, as we wanted the machines to come across as gigantic creatures. As some of the close-up tanks were separately shot with SFX support, 3D animation was used to control the timing of the tank fleet as they break through the fog. The battles were certainly the most challenging, as we had to work with extremely long and immersive takes, while layering the CG throughout the depth of the never-ending battlefield. At the same time, we had to deal with a lot of interactive SFX with the actors. We used our VFX stage on location for duplicating attacking soldiers, shooting weeks' worth of stuntmen on green screen treadmills, gun effects, and smoke bombs. All Quiet on the Western Front presents the viewer with 3 distinct battle sequences, each becoming progressively more gruesome. The horror was crucial to the story, so with every battle the work got more complex and difficult to achieve.
I just wanted to take this short break before we continue on of our review, just playing a clip from the making of All Quiet on the Western Front, also streaming alongside the movie on Netflix. And it's a very cool feature documentary that they've posted here, because I don't talk enough about the VFX work when it comes to this movie. And I just think that the VFX, they spared no expense. So yeah, I just wanted to play the clip. Now, let's move on to the next segment of our review. Now, you might be asking, as you're listening further on to this review for All Quiet on the Western Front, what's the point of comparing All Quiet on the Western Front to some other random war picture flick? Well, for one, I don't think in 1917, which is the movie that we're comparing All Quiet against, is a random war picture. For a matter of fact, 1917 is a revolutionary war film. I pretty much compare almost every single other war movie, including All Quiet on the Western Front, to this one. And second, whenever I like to form my thoughts and opinions on something, just any verdict, it always helps me to compare something else belonging to the same genre of film. Now that I've established the why for this comparison, let us get into the what. In comparing All Quiet on the Western Front to 1917, we find 2 formidable war pictures, right, that explore the realities of armed conflict in distinct ways. Before I converse about 1917 and All Quiet on the Western Front's commitment to realism and authenticity, I want to summarize the plot points for both movies, talk about the similarities and differences between the 2 plots, and then get into all of the other jazz. So get prepared for a long-ass take on All Quiet on the Western Front and 1917. So let's talk about 1917 first. In this particular gripping World War I story, set on 6 April 1917, surprise, surprise, that's the title of the movie, 2 British Lance Corporals, William Schofield and Tom Blake, are given a crucial mission. They must deliver a message to Colonel Mackenzie, calling off an attack that could potentially endanger the lives of 1,600 men, including Tom Blake's brother. As a part of one of their tactics, the Imperial German Army has withdrawn to the Hindenburg Line, waiting to unleash a devastating artillery barrage against the British military. Schofield and Blake brave the dangers of no man's land, encountering tripwires, a downed German pilot, and even enemy soldiers. Tragedy hits when Blake is fatally wounded, and Schofield promises to complete this short but deadly mission and deliver the news to Blake's family. Alone, Schofield crosses a destroyed bridge, sounds very depressing, engages in a sniper duel, and escapes German pursuit. Schofield finds a French woman caring for an orphan baby, but then his mission takes precedence and he reluctantly leaves. Finally, Schofield reaches the British forces and delivers the message to Colonel Mackenzie, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, halting the ill-fated attack. And then he locates Blake's brother, Joseph, informing him of the sacrifice made by Tom. Schofield is granted permission to write to their mother, and as he rests upon a tree, he reflects on his own family, finding solace in the message, "Come back to us," inscribed on a photograph. Okay, so that's the plot for 1917. Now I'm going to try as quickly as possible to summarize the plot for All Quiet on the Western Front. In the midst of World War I, young German soldier Paul Baumer and his friends experience the harsh reality of trench warfare. As they navigate the horrors of the Western Front, their illusions of glory are shattered. Amidst the chaos, Paul and his comrades forge strong bonds, finding solace in their camaraderie, while the German government contemplates armistice discourse. Paul and his friends then embark on a mission, as the German government are discussing shit, to locate missing recruits. They then discover the devastating aftermath of a gas attack, witnessing the tragic fate of their fellow soldiers. Despite their hopes for peace, General Friedrich orders a reckless attack, leading to further losses and despair. As the armistice deadline looms, 10 frickin' minutes in the end. But anyway, as the armistice deadline looms, Paul finds himself trapped in desolate no man's land, engaged in a brutal encounter with a French soldier. Overwhelmed by remorse, Paul seeks forgiveness from his dying enemy, grappling with the profound senselessness of war. Amidst political upheaval and the imminent end of the conflict, Paul witnesses the unraveling of the comrades. Each death leaves a lasting impact, driving home the futility of the violence that these German soldiers and French have had to endure. When the armistice is finally signed, Paul and his friend Kat attempt to steal one last moment of peace, but then tragedy strikes, leaving Paul alone to witness the fateful conclusion of the war. As the world celebrates the end of the conflict, Paul succumbs to his wounds, his death unrecognized amidst the chaos. A young recruit discovers his lifeless body, unaware of the immense sacrifice and suffering Paul endured. Damn, I should be narrating audiobooks, you know? I'm kidding. I'm just reading some notes and talking about my recollection of the movie. Anyway, the war ends, but its scars and the memories of lost comrades will forever haunt those who survived. Okay, so that's basically the plot for All Quiet on the Western Front, the subject of today's hearing. Here are a few similarities, though, when it comes to the plot with 1917, another film which I just briefly summarized. So, both All Quiet on the Western Front and 1917 are set during World War I and explore the experiences that soldiers had to deal with in the Western Front. In both films, the main characters are tasked with a critical mission that involves delivering a message. The films depict the harsh realities of trench warfare and the devastating consequences of armed conflicts. They highlight the brutal and chaotic nature of war, exposing the physical and emotional toll it takes on the soldiers that are involved in the conflict. Both films showcase the camaraderie and bonds formed between soldiers in the face of adversity. There's also this trope where the main characters must rely on their friendships and then mutual support to navigate dangerous situations and overcome challenges. The narratives of both films culminate in moments of sacrifice and loss. The characters have to deal with personal tragedies and witness the death of their comrades, underscoring the, very devastating effect of war on individuals and society as a whole. All in all, both All Quiet on the Western Front and 1917, they do share similarities when it comes to the plot. However, just as there are similarities, there are a couple differences that I noticed. For instance, 1917 and this All Quiet on the Western Front movie is filled with varying themes and messages, because 1917 delves into themes of duty, sacrifice, and the human cost of war. You know how the two characters, as they're walking, are just talking. One of them refers to an instance where they just traded their medal for a bottle of wine, right? Even though there was a cost associated with that medal. But you can see how desperate those soldiers were and the human cost that they had. 1917 also emphasizes the individual's role in a larger conflict and the personal sacrifices that must be made in a mission. 1917 also takes care to showcase the futility and senselessness of war, questioning the value and consequences of the battles fought. On the other hand, All Quiet on the Western Front has its own distinct themes and messages, which revolve around the subject of nationalism and the impact of war on society, and also the psychological toll on soldiers. The second key difference between All Quiet on the Western Front and 1917 is this: the perspectives and nationalities. Those are different, because 1917 focuses on two British Lance corporals highlighting the experiences and struggles that are faced by the British soldiers. 1917 also offers a British perspective on the war and the mission undertaken by our characters. In contrast, All Quiet on the Western Front centers around German soldiers, not British soldiers like in 1917, giving us further insights into the lives of people who are often villainized in Hollywood. You know, Germans, Nazis, but we actually get to see the Germans in World War I, specifically. I don't know about World War II, because they were the villains in World War II. I digress to say, though, that we get to see their lives, struggles, and perspectives during World War I. So, I think that this distinction of 1917 and All Quiet, when it comes to perspectives and nationalities, offers contrasting viewpoints and enables us to explore different cultural and historical contexts. And I think that's very remarkable, especially from All Quiet on the Western Front, because although I love 1917, I personally don't think it will ever be as multi-dimensional as All Quiet on the Western Front, because we actually get to see the other side. Also, All Quiet on the Western Front's attention to detail, just based on non-propaganda source images, further enhances its credibility. Similarly, 1917 is famous for its immersive cinematography, presenting the story as a continuous single-shot sequence. This technique, which is honestly one of my favorite techniques in all of filmmaking, evokes a sense of immediacy and allows viewers to experience the war alongside the characters in real time. And I love it. The soundtracks of both All Quiet on the Western Front and 1917 contribute significantly to their respective narratives. All Quiet on the Western Front utilizes an evocative orchestral score that conveys the brutality and dehumanization of war. But also the innovative use of, again, electric notes, as I've mentioned before in this review, adds a sense of industrial machinery, emphasizing the mechanized nature of conflict. In contrast, however, 1917 incorporates a more subtle and atmospheric soundtrack, often relying on allowing just the sounds of war to speak for themselves instead of words. But unlike 1917, I find the authentic sounds of war to be drowned out in All Quiet on the Western Front, if that makes sense. All Quiet on the Western Front is a compelling anti-war narrative that challenges the glorification and romanticization of conflict. It portrays the sacrifices made by soldiers and highlights the tragic consequences of war on the German side. On the other hand, 1917 focuses on the individual experiences of two soldiers on a mission, emphasizing the camaraderie, bravery, and determination amidst, again, the chaos of war. And I think 1917, as opposed to All Quiet on the Western Front, offers a more personal and intimate exploration of the human spirit in the face of the adversity. In terms of visual style, 1917 is again known for its technical achievements in innovative cinematography. The long takes and seamless camera movements just create a sense of, again, immediacy. All Quiet on the Western Front relies more on traditional filmmaking techniques, but it still captivates with its powerful imagery and emotional performances. It's just, because of the back and forth between time, we don't really get to feel the tension in real time. We get to feel it in segmented scenes of the movie, but it fades away as we transition to the next scene. Whereas in 1917, the feeling of tension does not fade away. And that's very more frightening than All Quiet on the Western Front. Okay, so in conclusion to my comparison of 1917 and All Quiet on the Western Front, both All Quiet and 1917 excel in their portrayal of war and its impact on any individuals, regardless of whether or not they're British soldiers, German soldiers, or French soldiers. At the end of the day, they're human beings who have experienced warfare. While the former takes a broader anti-war perspective and delves into the psychological toll of conflict, the latter offers a more focused and immersive journey through the eyes of its protagonists. So, both films really, All Quiet on the Western Front and 1917, contribute to the war genre by delivering thought-provoking narratives and showcasing, as Quentin Tarantino would like to say, the power of cinema. Or as, Martin Scorsese would like to say. Or Steven Spielberg, or Christopher Nolan. Those top league directors would probably agree with me. And my assessment of All Quiet on the Western Front, which I think brilliantly conveys the harsh realities of war. Here are my general insights to conclude this review on All Quiet on the Western Front. So, I think that All Quiet on the Western Front is a remarkable war film, portraying the existing source material that I also think has left an indelible impact on the genre. Its exquisite set design, theatrical and evocative soundtrack, and commitment to realism, how it's compared to 1917 with its striking imagery, contribute to its immersive storytelling. I also believe that All Quiet on the Western Front effectively encapsulates the horrors and tragic consequences of war, challenging the mainstream glorification of conflict and prompting viewers to critically examine the narratives perpetrated by society, or by me, because I actually don't believe in that high level of pacifism, but what do I know? Or also society back then that actually had more of a toxic view on war. And also that it isn't just, fighting in the military, Top Gun Maverick, shirtless beach selfies on the shore. Absolutely not. Fighting in a conflict is a lot more gruesome, and All Quiet on the Western Front belongs to a section of Hollywood that doesn't shy away from the harsh realities. Ultimately, 1917 and All Quiet on the Western Front contribute significantly to the war genre and provide valuable insights into the realities of armed conflict. But more importantly, I think All Quiet on the Western Front serve as reminders of the profound impact that war has had on individuals like Paul Baumer in the story, and other societies, urging us to reflect on the true cost of warfare. And, maybe peace can become a reality. I don't know. But whatever. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this was my take on All Quiet on the Western Front. We have now reached the end of this installment of the Cinema Courtroom Show. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast where we talked about Edward Berger's All Quiet on the Western Front. I had a lot of fun doing this podcast and reflecting on All Quiet on the Western Front, which is currently streaming on Netflix right now. So, if you've enjoyed my take on this movie, and also how I talked about the set designs, the sound, how it's compared to 1917, etc., etc. If you've enjoyed hearing all of that and more, well, why not drop by again on Friday for the next episode of the Cinema Courtroom Show, which launches Friday, 5 p.m. Dubai Standard Time on Spotify, Anchor, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, or the Cinema Courtroom YouTube channel for exclusive video coverage. So again, look up the Cinema Courtroom on Spotify, Anchor, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, or the Cinema Courtroom YouTube channel. Thank you once again for listening till the end. I am your Galactic Judge Makram, and I hope you have a spectacular day. I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Hello there.